Story 1. They didn't die in the woods. The 217 incident. It happened 3 weeks ago in the Olympic National Park. There were 4 of us, myself, Mark, Sam, and his girlfriend, Lena. We weren't rookies. We had hundreds of trail miles under our belts. But this forest, it felt like it was waiting for us. It started on the second day. At some point, the birds just stopped. Not like they do before a storm, but total, absolute silence. Imagine putting on noise-canceling headphones in the middle of a wilderness. Mark was the first to notice something was wrong. His mechanical Casio watch, which had never failed him, had stopped at exactly 2:17 p.m. I checked mine, same thing. Sam pulled out his phone, but the screen was just glowing with gray static. We decided to turn back, but the trail we had walked 30 minutes ago now dead-ended into a wall of brush so thick and black, it looked like it had been growing there for centuries. "Hey, look up!" Lena shouted, pointing at the canopy. We looked up and froze. High in the trees, maybe 50 feet above the ground, things were suspended between the pines. Backpacks, jackets, old boots. They weren't thrown there. They were hanging in the air as if caught in an invisible web. At that moment, Sam just started to rise. It wasn't a jump or levitation. It looked like he was being pulled by an invisible hook attached to his collarbone. He didn't even have time to scream, just a wet, choking sound. His body jerked as he drifted slowly upward toward those suspended things. Lena grabbed his legs, but she was pulled off the ground too. "Let go!" I yelled, grabbing her waist, but a wave of cold hit me so hard my fingers went numb. Story 2. The Exclusion Zone. Diary of a Dead Season. I found this rucksack in Sector 4B. This area has been closed to hikers for 5 years due to soil instability. As a ranger, I knew that was a lie. The ground there is solid granite. Inside the bag was a diary, wrapped in 3 layers of heavy plastic. Entry, September 12th. Something is wrong with the echoes here. I shouted to scare off a bear, but the sound didn't bounce back. It just went into the woods and vanished. 5 minutes later, I heard my own shout, but it didn't come from the forest. It came from right under my feet, loud and clear, like I was standing in a well. Entry, September 14th. The birds are gone, then the squirrels. Today I saw a deer. It was standing in the clearing, but its legs were longer than they should be, 3 times as long. It moved in jerks, like frames were being cut out of a movie. I raised my rifle, but when I looked through the scope, the deer just folded, literally like a piece of paper, layer by layer, until it was just a small gray speck on the grass. Entry, September 15th. It doesn't just mimic sounds, it mimics presence. I'm sitting in my tent and I hear people walking outside. Lots of people. Fragments of conversation, the jingle of keys, the sound of a zipper. But when I look out, there's only fog and black pine trunks. The worst part? I recognize one of the voices. It was my own voice, reading this exact diary entry 3 pages ahead. The last entry was in pencil, the handwriting almost illegible. It's here. It doesn't know It to look them want to eat me. It wants to integrate me. I see it behind the trees. It has no face, just the texture of bark and moss. If you find this, don't look for me. I'm not alone anymore. I am the forest now. I closed the diary and felt a chill crawl down my spine. Around me, in the usually noisy woods, that same dead silence had fallen. And from the thicket directly behind me, I heard a distinct sound, the sound of someone closing a diary. Story 3. The Perfect Guest in Cabin 9. My girlfriend Kate and I rented an Airbnb in the Appalachians. Old timber frame, floor-to-ceiling windows, 5 miles from the nearest neighbor. Perfect for an anniversary, except for a strange warning on the back of the check-in sheet. If you hear a knock in the rhythm of your own heartbeat, do not answer. The first night we laughed it off. The second night, Kate started sleepwalking. I woke up to find her standing at the panoramic window, staring into the pitch-black woods. "Kate," I called out. "He wants to come in," she whispered. "He says he's cold, and he has my face." I walked over to her, and the hair on my arm stood up. Outside, right against the glass in the moonlight, stood a thing. It was tall, nearly 10 feet, with limbs as thin as branches. But the head was the nightmare. Instead of a face, it had a flat, white oval, where features were slowly appearing, like a photo developing in real time. Eyes, a nose, even the mole above Kate's lip. It started to knock. Thump, 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 thump. Exactly in the rhythm of my terrified heart. I dragged Kate into the bedroom and locked the door. We sat on the floor, huddled together. And then, from the living room, a voice drifted through the door. It was the voice of my mother, who had been dead for 10 years. "Which is so cold, and so much mother doing pretty adore." "It's so a cold," Credip says. "What do we say very big, hen?" It was not meaning my mother in the past the voice. It once who to standing or very did. It was closely the most both time with my mother when they once the door and they worked to screen. And then from the living room, a voice drifted through the door. It so cold me unstared for my mother. It was not doing for now. It was not when it means untong to me. It was address them from a bed. And then we said, yes, the worse of my mother. It was just by the nurse of the mother. I loved it me to stand from the reason. It was better than my pace in the door. It was not pure for my mother, and then we get dead for the dress. It's so cold for the head another entry with right now. So then we will remain them 2% of the grow fact. But then we said, my mother, it's so cold. "It's so cold out here, honey," the voice said, perfectly mimicking her soft tone. "And the window is stuck. Why did you lock the bedroom? I can see you through the floorboards." I looked down. There were no holes in the floor, but then I saw it. A thin, pale finger, textured like dry wood, slowly poking up through a solid oak plank as if the wood were nothing but water. It didn't break the floor, it merged with it. We spent the night in the center of the bed, watching fingers sprout from the walls and floor like mushrooms. When the sun rose, they retracted, leaving no holes, no scars, only the faint smell of wet earth and the sound of my mother's voice, whispering, "Happy anniversary," from inside the walls. I haven't looked in a mirror since. I'm afraid I'll see my own face starting to blur, becoming just another texture for whatever lives in those mountains.